Welcome to the Mirror Media Podcast.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Mirror Media Podcast. I'm your host, Mukti. Today, I'm joined by two. I found them on Twitter. They're amazing. I think they're scholars. They might not call themselves that, but they're scholars of the Saiva Siddhanta school of thought within Hindu thought. One is Angirasa. I think he goes online by Ghorangirasa. And then Pinaki is the other one, and he goes by Pinakasena, I believe. So both these individuals I've been learning so much about over the past, few years about Saiva Siddhanta's thought, and I don't know anything about it. So I thought, let's have them on to talk about it. They're both going to go today without their screens, which is for a variety of different reasons. But I think for everyone watching, if you guys prefer, you could just turn off the video and watch listen to the podcast on YouTube, or you can watch it and see my beautiful face if that's interesting to you. But if not, then just listen to it on the podcast. So Angirasa, Pinaki, Vanakkam, Namaste, Har Har Mahadev. Thank you guys.
Namaste, Har Har Mahadev.
Thank you guys for joining us. How are you doing?
We're good. It's a nice Sunday morning here.
Excellent.
Where I am. So
Right.
we've been actually sort of waiting for a chance to speak about Siddhanta.
Yeah, it's funny because I did reach out to you guys about a year and change ago, and it just fell off the schedule for me, and that's my fault. So my apologies.
No worries.
But I thought this was a great opportunity to really jump into Saiva Siddhanta thought and get some practitioner expertise, and you guys have studied this for so long. It's been difficult, honestly, for me to find other Shaivites online that are knowledgeable enough to have a conversation about the traditions. So this is exciting for me, and I think it'll be exciting for our listeners, because honestly, majority of my podcasts so far have been very Vaishnavite oriented, which for a variety of reasons, is both a good thing and can be annoying to some people, I'm sure. So if you guys kind of want to go into your background about the Siddhanta and study of Tamil and Sanskrit, and how you guys got into the Siddhanta itself.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so to give a bit of a background about myself, I was born in a Smarta Iyer family, and of course, for all practical purposes, I'm still Smarta. But since young, I was deeply interested in the Shaiva tradition, which started sort of when my parents got me copies of the famous sacred Tamil Shaiva work Tirumandram, which is a collection of 3,000 plus verses. It's poetic verses in Tamil, which deals with a whole lot of mantra sadhana, metaphysics, theology, yoga, Shaiva yoga to be specific, and so on. And and also mandalas, yantras, and so on. I was actually deeply interested in the larger world of Shaiva Tantra from that age. So I started delving into both the Tamil tradition and the Sanskrit tradition slowly. And of course, since young, like a lot of people, I also believed that Shaiva Siddhanta was a uniquely Tamil religion or a Tamil development, something that originated in Tamil Nadu even. At least when I was around, at least till I would say 18 or 19, I probably subscribed to this myth that Shaiva Siddhanta is of Tamil provenance, which is not the case. Okay, so for me, what got me interested in was, let's see the genuine historical background of Siddhanta, and that led me to what I can call the Kashmira school, or what I can also call the Satyajoti Aghora Shiva school. Satyajoti is a famous Kashmira Siddhanta theologian. His date is not exactly determined, but say around, we can speculate around 400, 500 Common Era. And then Aghora Shiva was the culmination of that lineage. He lived in Chidambaram, Tamil Nadu, and he's considered one of the greatest Siddhanta theologians before what we call now the mainstream Siddhanta of today, the Tamil Shaiva Siddhanta school, for greater accuracy, I will call it the Meyakandar school. So before the Meyakandar school, there is the Satyajyoti Aghora Shiva school, which began in Kashmir, flourished in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Odisha, and so on. And eventually it came to Tamil Nadu, where it produced Aghora Shiva.
So if I could ask a question here.
Sure.
So this school started roughly, the earliest records you're saying are roughly 400 or 500 CE, and it started in Kashmir. Is there any common root with the Kashmir Trika Shaivism, or are they entirely separate in terms of everything?
Okay, so I think scholarly research on that is still going on. What we can say is that in Shaivam there are two major branches. One is called the Atimarga and the second is called the Mantramarga. The Atimarga consists of Vaidika Pashupata, Panchartika Pashupata. Panchartika Pashupata is the Pashupata school reflected in the Pashupata Sutras. And then you have a distinct Lakulisha Pashupata. And then you have the famous, or rather I should say notorious, infamous Kapalika school, which is associated with the negative tropes everywhere. Even Shaivas give it a negative image. Kapalikas and so on. Those schools focused primarily on renunciation, and they were largely ascetic centered. And then came the Mantramarga, which scholars say that is a gradual offshoot of the Atimarga. So this Mantramarga, what was its initial form? We are still working on it, but this Mantramarga later divided into 5 different streams: the Siddhanta, the Bhairava Marga, and 3 other schools. Now, Siddhanta and the Bhairava are the 2 major ones. Bhairava is the tradition which gives you Abhinava Gupta, who's also associated with the Trika school and so on. So the Bhairava is a non-dualist Shaiva school, which is later related to the Kaula, Krama, Trika, and other such non-dualist Shaiva Shakta schools. And then you have the Siddhanta, which is, for convenience, it's called the dualist. So yes, there is a relation, because both Siddhanta and Trika will ultimately go back to this Mantramarga group of Shaiva schools. What differentiates Atimarga and the Mantramarga is that the Mantramarga is based on a scheme of 36 planes of existence, 36 tattvas, while the Atimarga follows the older Samkhya model of 24/25 tattvas. So that is the major difference. So yes, you're right, there is a relationship.
Yeah, that's interesting because of the demarcation between the 36 tattvas and the 24 tattvas. I've heard that the Kashmir school also has 36 tattvas, correct?
Yes.
And in your school, the Siddhanta school is 24, the Sankhya style, or
Siddhanta is 36.
36 also. Are they? Would they be the same tattvas? Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Yes.
Please, Kshityadi Shivantaka Tattva. So there are 36 which start from Kshiti or Prithvi up to the Shiva Tattva, which is the highest Tattva. And as far as I was able to see, the Kashmir school, Siddhanta, and even the Veera Shaivas of Karnataka, we all follow the same 36 Tattva scheme.
Now, we'll get deeper into this, and I want to explore this more. But let's just bookmark what those tattvas are and how they're different from Sankhya tattvas. So back to what you were saying earlier about the history. So
yeah,
when did the school of the Aghora school or Satyajyoti school in the north come to the south, and then when did it? Would you say it's separated from the Meyakandar school, or was Meyakandar school kind of its own separate offshoot that started somewhere else, or what's the relationship between those two?
Okay, so a few things to note here. We are still working on the historical problem of when the Siddhanta tradition originated. I think it is safe to say that as far as the Mantramarga group of schools, the Siddhanta, Trika, or Mantramarga offshoot. Trika is strictly not Mantramarga, but a Mantramarga offshoot. Mantramarga schools would be Siddhanta and the Bhairava school to which Abhinava Gupta was affiliated. So Siddhanta, all this form the Mantramarga school. It is now an accepted consensus that Siddhanta was sort of the base upon which the Mantramarga grew. originally dualist, which makes perfect sense when you consider that the Mantramarga itself was a gradual evolutionary offshoot of the dualist Atimarga. So it has to be a dualist gradually going towards a non-dualist. Now, regarding the issue of dating, the Nishvasa corpus, which is the earliest corpus of text belonging to the Siddhanta, is dated by some to the 400. Now, we do not know if there were earlier Siddhanta texts or so on. As I said, there is a severe paucity of historical evidence regarding this, but we're trying to figure this out. Now, what happened was, Satyajyoti, who's traditionally dated around, say, 500s or 600s, he started writing commentaries on the Raurava and Swayambhuva agamas of the Siddhanta tradition. And he was trying to present this a dualist version of Siddhanta against the incursion from what he felt was the Vedanta and other such traditions. So he felt the need to show that the Vedanta or these mainstream texts, which you have all been subscribing to, the Brahma Sutra, the Gita and all that, they are not self-sufficient because they don't tell you all of the tattvas. They can only lead you up to the 24th or 25th tattva. So in order to get the full deal on reality, you need to understand the 36 tattvas. And more importantly, you need to understand this concept called balam. We can go into the specifics of the theology.
Yeah, I would love
no
to.
Problem. Yeah, sure.
So before we get into that, I mean, the
Yeah.
question I would have to follow up on this is, well, I guess not follow up is, if we want to kind of start from the beginning, right? What are the most important foundational texts for, what do you want to call this school, this particular school, to separate it from the Meyakandar school?
See, that's the thing. Because it is the original school, it never bothered to name itself. It's
Right.
famous Hinduism problem.
Right.
We never named ourselves till others started coming. So I guess what we can call temporarily is the Satyajyoti Aghora Shiva school, because it encompasses all the major acharyas between Satyajyoti and Aghora Shiva as well.
Okay.
Or an alternative I can propose is we can call this the Ashtaprakarana school, because there is a body of 8 fundamental treatises composed by various acharyas such as Satyajyoti, the famous Bhatta Ramakanta of Kashmir also, and Aghora Shiva of Chidambaram. So the works composed by these 8 are like considered or so esteemed that even some followers of the Meyakandar school call it appendices to the Agama. So, ancillary works to the Agama. So it's that esteemed. So, and they are known as Ashtaprakarana, 8 independent treatises. So we can call it Ashtaprakarana school.
Okay. Okay, I'll call it the Ashtaprakarana school. So on that, okay, let's start with the text. What are the most foundational texts to this tradition? And then what role do the Vedic texts at all play in relationship to those texts?
Oh, sorry, your second question was the basic role?
No. What relationship do the Vedic texts, the Veda Agama,
the Vedic text. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay.
Have a relationship with the foundational text to Ashtaprakarana?
Okay, that's an interesting question actually. Okay, the famous Shaiva scholar Alexis Sanderson, he takes the view that Shaivas genuinely came up with a completely parallel track to what he and other scholars call the so-called Brahminical religion or Brahminism, or Vedic religion. Shaivas genuinely came up with a separate body of revelation, the Shaiva Agamas, and they claim that the Shaiva Agamas transcend the Vedic revelation, and they form a completely separate parallel track. So that's the position taken by Alexis Sanderson. Now, yes, to some extent, what Sanderson says is true, because if you look at the Saiva Siddhanta text, they do make it clear that the Vedic texts are clearly transcended by the Agama, in the sense that while the Vedic texts may give you some hints here and there as to the highest reality, they don't give you the full doctrine. They don't flesh it out for you. But the Shaiva Agamas flesh it out for you. They give you the 36 tattvas. They tell you the the root cause of all problems and limitations that the human soul faces, which is mala, the primordial impurity that follows every sentient being in existence. So it is the Shaiva Agamas, the Siddhanta Agamas, that give you all these insights. And therefore, Siddhanta Agamas are the encompassing scriptures, while the Vedic scriptures are the encompassed. So that is the relationship between the Shaiva and the Vedic scriptures that is taken in the Agama. At the same time, I need to clarify something. The famous, the great Acharya of the Ashtaprakarana school, Sadyojyoti, he still makes it clear that it is important for Shaivas to keep defending the authority of the Veda against Nastika Bauddha incursion. He says that because he says it is the Veda that still provides the basic, how do I put it, like a basic blueprint for all the fundamental doctrines such as karma and so on. And therefore, it is important for the Shaivas to defend it. And the second reason he gives is that it is the Veda that supplies you with knowledge of lokachara, knowledge of worldly conduct, the social norms that everyone is governed by. Even Shaivas are governed by in worldly intercourse and so on. So it's important to keep defending the Shruti and the related texts against the Nastika. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So would you also, like, what are the main 8 texts then that we would be form the core of the school of Ashtaprakarana?
Okay. So I can actually read a list of the 8 texts. So the first one would be Tattva Prakasha by the Paramara king of Madhya Pradesh, Bhojadeva, famously known as Bhojaraj. Tattva Prakasha. So he's actually a royal author. Tattva Prakasha. This was composed in Madhya Pradesh.
Oh wow!
And then exactly. So in general, when the Ashtaprakarana is published, Tattva Prakasha is always the first text in the series because it literally, as its name suggests, it's a prakasha. It's an illumination on all the 36 tattvas. And then following that is the Tattva Samkhya of the ancient sage Sadyojyoti, which Tattva Samkhya also goes. Okay, what Tattva Samkhya does is it goes into the technicalities and nuances of these tattvas. And then you have a similar work of Sadyojyoti called Tattva Nirnaya, which discusses the 3 tattvas primarily of Pashupati Pasha. There are 36 tattvas, but you can group them into 3, not 36 tattvas, sorry. What I mean is there are 3 fundamental realities in Shaiva thought. Pati, the Lord, Paramashiva. Pashu, the bound soul that is suffering. And then Pasha, the bondages which cause the suffering. So Tattva Nirnaya is a sort of deep look into these 3 fundamental realities that forms part of the architecture of existence. And then you have Ratnatraya Pariksha of Shrikanta Suri. We do not know where Shrikanta Suri is exactly from, whether he's from Tamil Nadu or Kashmir or Madhya Pradesh. We don't exactly know where he is from, but he wrote the Ratnatraya Pariksha specifically to discuss the Shaiva concept of Bindu. So Bindu is like in Shaiva tradition, material cause of existence, there are 2 different material causes. One is called Ashuddha Maya and the other one is called Shuddha Maya, pure Maya. Shuddha Maya is also known as Bindu. So Ratnatraya Pariksha is a text that goes deep into how Bindu works, what exactly is Bindu and so on. It's quite a unique text in that, right? And then we have Bhoga Karika of Satyojyoti again. Bhoga Karika is a short work but interesting work. It talks about Bhoga. Bhoga here should not be understood as enjoyment in the sensuous context, but experience itself. So it basically goes into what makes up cognitive experience. What is experience? How does a person experience things, come to know things? So and what is the root cause of a human being's experience of things in this world, and so on. And then you have Nada Karika of the famous Bhattarama Kantha. Nada Karika goes into the subject of Nada. Now it's obviously very difficult to translate a word like nada, so I'm not going to try too much here. But
Everyone will think it's
basically,
sound, but it's not. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it is hard. It gets hard. But let's just say nada is that source of all your thoughts and speech, an ultimate source of all your thoughts and speech. So Ramakanta kind of goes deep into the mechanics of what is nada and how it arises from Paramashiva and how it evolves into further evolution. And then you have Moksha Karika, which is again by Sadyojyoti, where he describes what is the highest Shaiva Mukti state. So he goes deep into it. I think that is one of the most important insights you can get from the Shaiva tradition is its view of Mukti is very different. The old Siddhanta, at least, the Ashtaprakarana school's view of what constitutes the highest Mukti is very different from other schools. And then the last work, the eighth work, Paramoksha Nirasa Karika, again by Sadyojyoti. As the name suggests, it's a Nirasa Karika on Paramoksha. That means it's a refutation of other schools' doctrines of Mukti, doctrines of release. So it criticizes other school positions on what constitutes Mukti. So these are the 8 works that make up the Ashtaprakarana school. These 8 works are to be read together with the Siddhanta Agamas, which are 28 in number traditionally. Thing is, we do not have all those 28 Agamas intact, and even if you can find all the 28 Agamas, you will not find what you call the Vidyapada section, which is the knowledge section of the Agama, which actually discusses philosophy. Most importantly, these 8
Why wouldn't you find that? Was it lost, or is it not preserved, or in that way?
Okay, I genuinely think it's because, at least as far as the north is concerned, it is some texts are preserved thankfully better in the north due to the cold climate there in Kashmir and Nepal. But problem is Kashmir bore the brunt of invasions and other things. So I think the class of say priests and scholars who were preserving those Siddhanta texts died off. So that's one effect. That's one cause. And then in the south, you had that class thriving.
Right.
But problem is the climate in the south is quite horrible for textual preservation.
That's right. For anything to survive after loss, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have actually lost a lot due to sheer climate alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So that's why we don't have a lot of text, sadly. But I know I wouldn't say we don't have a lot of text. Let me take that back. I'll say we have lost a lot of text, but whatever we have now can still run into several thousand pages.
So a question on this is, okay, so we have this tradition. So it's interesting to me because most people, when they hear Saiva Siddhanta, their first thought is it's very, very hardcore Tamil tradition, right? But the 8 texts you gave, for Ashtaprakarana, none of them are Tamil. They're all Sanskrit texts, correct?
They're all Sanskrit texts, and all of them are composed outside Tamil Nadu.
All of them. Oh, interesting. Okay,
yeah.
So. And now, but the tradition, as you got introduced to it, was through Tamil, right?
Yes.
So, what is the connection between Shaiva, the Saiva Siddhanta of Ashtaprakarana and Tamil culture, Tamil Mori, everything?
Okay, so again, very, very complex question, difficult one as well. Okay.
Sorry, I'm asking these tough questions. It's just because I don't think many people know about these things. I don't either.
No. Yeah, I mean, like I said, right, we have only started gaining awareness of how pan-Indian Siddhanta was in the last 20-25 years of scholarship. Thanks to scholars like Dominic Goodall, Professor T. Ganesan from the Pondicherry Institute. It's due to their efforts, and of course Alexis Sanderson, most importantly. It's due to their efforts over the last 20-25 years, we have finally understood, Siddhanta has such a rich pan-Indian heritage. It's not some school that was just confined to Tamil Nadu. That's a complete myth. So, okay, now I have to clarify, the Meyakandar school and Ashtaprakarana school are not entirely distinct or anything. In fact, the Meyakandar school, how do I put it? Its basic structure, the basic ontology, basic metaphysics, it retains from the older school, the older Agora Shiva.
It just seems to me, if I can, it seems to be almost the demarcation between Vanagale and Tengale, right? It's just in terms of, maybe I'm wrong, but like
not entirely,
because I think the Tengales are more
yeah.
focused on the Tamil Prabandhams, and the Vadagales are more interested in the Sanskrit side, even though they still hold the other texts to be very important. It's just the emphasis is different, and it seems to me that's kind of would be the difference between the Meyakandar school and Ashtaprakarana.
Oh, okay. The differences between the Meyakandar school and the Ashtaprakarana school are very nuanced doctrinal positions. If I can just very briefly state them, it would be that, okay, to put it in the form of a question, what is the state of the soul in the highest Paramukti? That is the question. And the two schools have slightly different answers to it. They both agree that in the highest state of Mukti, the soul will be completely freed from the clutches of Mala once and for all. But what they don't agree is that while the Ashtaprakarana school, against all of, I would say, Hindu tradition takes the position that every sentient entity is innately omnipresent and infinite and is omniscient and omnipotent. That's a position that no school takes. And I think by the time Shaivam came to Tamil Nadu and the Meyakandar school started evolving, they also did not want to take that position which their predecessors in Kashmir had taken, because it was such an odd position for most of them to take. So they also took the position that no, the soul remains limited even in the state of Mukti, as in its innate composition, to put it that way. But what happens is, this time in Mukti, the soul becomes one with Lord Shiva and starts soaking on Lord Shiva's qualities. Therefore, it reflects his omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience, and so on. But it itself is still a limited atomic entity. So I think that's the position. If I'm right, I mean, I hope I'm not wrong. But yeah, that's what I understand the Meyakandar school to say. While the Siddhanta school, against the grain of all of Hindu tradition, takes the position that every sentient entity, every soul is infinite, omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. So that's the most unique, I would say, unique selling point of the Aghora Shiva school.
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting. And I think maybe we could talk about that briefly, right? What is,
yes.
I think now we get into this, and I mean, for people listening, we're going to jump around a little bit, so I apologize for that, but this is the nature of conversation as it free flows.
Sure.
Can we first maybe talk about what is Mala?
Okay. Yes.
I feel like that's the foundation.
Pinaki, I think you may want to go on this. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, and before we go into what Mala is, one more like very you might think very trivial, but it's actually kind of nuanced position which I did observe between the Meyakandar school and the Aghora Shiva school, is whether sentient but like creatures like say a plant can be given diksha or not. And I mean, that is the level of discussion in which they go into and have differences of opinion, where there is a hagiography of Umapati Shiva actually giving diksha to a plant and it immediately attains Mukti, a position which Aghora Shiva would not accept.
Yes, that's actually nuanced point. But yeah, you finish. Sorry.
Yeah, so the differences between the Meyakandar school and the Aghora Shiva school is so nuanced and at so many levels that it's actually like finding a particular kind of hay in a haystack. So it's not that simple for us to differentiate very easily. But we can say for certain that there is a split, and like there are several points of doctrinal differences. I think we might cover it as we continue speaking on it. Now, coming back to your question of what is Mala. Mala is a primordial impurity. So Mala can be directly translated as impurity, but then it is kind of a primordial substance, you can say, which has a Shakti. It has its own power, which is Vyapta, as in it covers everything. And this Shakti, it acts as it's a Rodha Shakti. It stops the bound souls from realizing their true dharma, which is their omnipotence and their omniscience. So it's like some of the analogies given are like a certain kind of discoloration on copper, which is caused by oxidation process. Then so, or there is like the cataract in the eye. Such are the kind of analogies which are given. So there are infinite bound souls which are facing the which actually are under the influence, you can say, or actually their power has been curtailed by this Mala Shakti, which is a singular entity.
Okay, that's interesting. So I mean, the only thing I can think of in the Samkhyan or whatever the other Vedantic schools would be, Mala is equivalent to. I mean, I'm making this equivalent. I'm sure you guys will disagree and provide more nuance here. It's somewhat similar to the role of karma in as in like non. What's it called? Beginningless karma, right? Because Mala here in this sense is the same thing that obfuscates the nature of the Pashu from understanding its true nature, much like karma does in the Samkhyan tradition or other Vedantic traditions.
So karma also plays a role in Saiva Siddhantam. We do not reject that there is a beginningless chain of karma for all Pashus as well. But why this chain of karma exists and why it differs is what I intuit is pointing towards the existence of Mala. It's like, sure, all jivas, you can say, in different Vedantic traditions or Sankhya traditions, they claim that there is beginningless karma and phala chain, right? So it's then, if it is beginningless, then there are various explanations as to why different souls have different experiences. Like, even if it is beginningless, how did it differ? How do several souls now, in case of Advaita, they don't have to explain anything of that sort because there is only the existence of Brahman. But in schools where there is an acceptance of multiplicity of souls, then why is the experience of different souls different? Now, in the Madhva school, they have something called as Swarupa, like it is called as the Swarupa of that jiva. So they are classified into three kinds, like Tamo Yogya, Nitya Samsarin, and Mukti Yogya. So for them, the soul itself is belonging to one of these categories, and because it belongs to one of these categories by its own Swarupa Swabhava, it has this chain of karma and phala which goes on like this. It's like it is impelled to do that. But since and that is why in their school the ultimate goal of all of the souls is also quite different. They do not have a similar level of mukti. Like Nitya Samsarins is, if I'm not wrong, they'll never get mukti. Only Mukti Yogyas get mukti, and Tamo Yogyas are obviously going to, like Rakshasas and Asuras, they're going to attain a certain hell. But in Shaiva Siddhanta, all Pashus, every single Pashu is going to attain the same mukti. Like the quality of it, not that they're all going to become the same, but the quality of that mukti is going to be the same across the board, which is to attain Shivatvam, which is the same as becoming same as Paramashiva, who has beginninglessly never been influenced by Mala.
Okay, so then what would be the differentiation between Mala and karma?
Okay, perhaps if I can answer that. Kirana Agama, which received a commentary from the Kashmir Siddhanta Acharya, Bhattaramakanta, he explains it with an analogy which I think is useful. He says he compares the soul which is obscured by Mala to to a garment that has a stain. And he compares karma to the sort of a detergent or soap that is going to be used to remove the stain. And the stone slab on which the garment is placed for cleaning, he compares it to Maya. I will go into Maya later, but basically, to answer your question, karma does not obscure the soul's vision. Karma is literally, if karma, the way it is pictured in Siddhanta, it is like a nitya pravaha, an eternally flowing stream of action, stored up consequences waiting to manifest and backfire at you someday, and then the karmas that you keep incurring and you keep incurring and storing up. So it's like a never-ending stream of actions and consequences. That is what karma is. Actions and consequences don't obscure, or should I say, karma and its pala do not obscure your vision of who you really are. So, which is why the Siddhantis never really could accept that karma alone can explain everything, because they ask the question, what is it that is, which is why the Bhoga Karika by Satyajyoti was written, what is it that causes a soul to be a doer and experiencing entity? What do you call that? A bogi, someone who experiences, a bhoktru, and why is the soul even experiencing karma pala? Why is the soul even constantly doing karma, which are good but of limited use, or worse, we are doing bad karmas, earning worse, like earning terrible consequences for themselves. So what actually makes the soul get into contact with actions again and again? And that's where the Siddhantis came up with an insight. I wouldn't say it's an insight derived through pure reasoning. It's more of, I would say, meditation and divine inspiration, or at least that's how they put it. It is mala, it is primordial mala that makes the soul want to do things again and again. But Lord Shiva takes the very karma that the soul is performing and uses the karma to cleanse the soul of mala gradually. That's what the Siddhantis believe in. But if you see the primordial mala's fundamental quality is obscuration, which is why one of the cheap analogies which Pinaki just mentioned is that of a cataract in the eye. The eye by itself, if you look at it, it is facing the without. It is constantly directed outside. It is looking at something. But if a cataract is covering the front of the eye, even though the eye is turned towards the without, it's seeing outside. It won't be able to grasp any information or pick up any information from the outside world, because the cataract is blocking it from performing its natural function of seeing and cognizing information. So that's what they say. The soul's nature is to be omniscient, but mala is blocking it. The soul's nature is to be omnipotent, but mala is preventing it from being a full agent. So I think that's what we can understand. Karma does not obscure. Karma just stores up and causes you pain later or pleasure later, maybe.
So okay, so I'm understanding. So the way it seems to me is within the Ashtaprakarana school and over larger Saiva Siddhanta schools, the idea of karma is merely the cause and effect of a thing.
Yes.
So well, I think in other schools, they tend to be, karma is a word I think used, a placeholder not only for cause and effect, but things like mental dispositions that carry on from life to life, or the raga dveshas and vasanas, and all these things are grouped under the karma, and they're kind of just used as a simple blanket term, which what I think is like within, I would say within, like, say even Vishita with a school, we would say that people have different experiences or experience the world differently because of the nature of the Atma's attachment, or the attachment of the we could say the manomaya kosha, right? Yeah. To the physical world, and passing along from life to life, it comes with these vasanas that obscure one's desire to seek, Perumal or Bhagavan or Ishvara, whatever, and that is obscured by the other desires that one has from the past life or whatever.
Okay, So to provide a Siddhanta perspective, all those things which you mentioned, whether it is vasanas or modified states of one's own buddhi, manas, indriyas, the Siddhanta says these are all evolutes of what we call Ashuddha Maya, the impure Maya. Ashuddha Maya transforms into Prakriti later, and then Prakriti then later transforms into Buddhi, Manas, Ahankara, Indriyas, and so on and so forth. The thing about these tattvas, the Manas, Buddhi, and so on, is that they ultimately enable the soul, the bound soul, to still perceive something and become a knower. While if it was up to Mala, the sentient soul would be no different from an insentient table or chair.
So
That's literally how bad is Mala.
So that's interesting. So what's the nature of relationship between Mala and Ishvara, right? Or Shiva? Is Mala a power of Shiva, or is it separate from Shiva? How does that work?
Okay. In Siddhanta, the answer is quite simple. Mala is an eternal substance, a singular eternal substance, but Mala is infinite number of Shaktis. One Shakti for each bonded sentient soul. So Mala is infinite power, and each power of Mala binds and traps a sentient entity, which is a Pashu. So that's how it works.
Yeah, so I get that, but what is Ishvara's connection to Mala? Is Mala and Ishvara two separate beings? Meaning, like,
they're two separate entities.
Is that
Mala
why it's called a dualism?
The dualism, actually, okay, it's called dualism simply because Siddhanta says Paramashiva, the soul, you're all distinct. Paramashiva and the insentient universe, distinct. Paramashiva and Mala, also distinct. So there are all these distinct entities, and I would say it's more than dualism. It simply affirms the distinct existences of the sentience and insentience.
So, okay, so if I can understand this correctly, there's, say, three substances, right? There's Ishvara, there is the Pashu,
and
there's also Mala, and is the world, is Prakriti separate from those three entities, or is it a part of one of those entities?
Okay, so this is okay, to give a very quick broad summary. Pati, Pashu, Pasha. Pati is of course Paramashiva. Pashu is the soul, the bound soul, and then you have Pasha. Now under Pasha we have three types of Pasha, three types of bonds: Mala, Karma, Maya. So Maya is some people will complicate it a little further and call it the Bindu Maya. So let's forget Bindu for a while. Let's just focus on Ashuddha Maya. Ashuddha Maya is the ultimate raw material that is used to create the whole universe, not just the universe we know, but also all the higher worlds, this world, and all that. It is basically the ultimate substance that makes all of that. It even makes the categories which, what do you call that? The so-called Kantian categories, which make experience possible. Maya is the ultimate raw material that creates time. It creates time, Kala Tattva, it creates Niyati Tattva. Niyati Tattva is a very interesting Tattva which determines the relationships between various materials, or Niyati Tattva joins a particular soul to its karma and so on. And then you have all these other Tattvas which makes a coherent experience of existence possible. Maya Tattva is said to be the root material cause that makes up these things. Then one of the evolutes of Maya Tattva down the line is Prakriti Tattva. And then from Prakriti Tattva, you will eventually get Buddhi Tattva, Manas Tattva, Ahankara Tattva, Indriya, Panchabhutas, and so on. And so that generates all of this.
Oh, so that's interesting, right? Because you have these higher tattvas that from one of the tattvas, which is now the Maya tattva, comes the 24 Samkhya categories, or 23 technically, right?
I would say 23 comes from Prakriti.
Yeah, which is part of Maya, correct?
Part of Maya. Prakriti is eventually an evolute of Maya. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So the 23 different Samkhya categories fall under Prakriti, which Prakriti is still there, but it's under Maya as a Ashuddha.
Exactly.
Ashuddha, right?
Maya.
Ashuddha Maya. And then the Pashu, which is the equivalent of would you would you say the Pashu and Purusha are the same within those traditions or not?
Interesting. That's a good question. There are some texts which discuss the relationship between the Pashu and Purusha Tattva. But I think it is safe to say that Pashu is still something beyond the Purusha Tattva. It is.
Okay.
And just to give a clarity, just make something clear, which is something I always try to make clear in all my tweets on Siddhanta, is for Siddhantis, Tattvas are insentient. Absolutely insentient. They may be the building blocks of existence, but they're insentient. A Pashu is of limited knowledge and power due to Mala, but he's still a sentient entity. So that's the most important thing, insight from Siddhanta, where true to its Sankhyan root, the division between sentient and insentient is extremely rigid and strict. Yeah. So that's an important.
One more thing, if I can, add,
Sure.
even if the Pashu is bound, the nature of the Pashu, the soul, is Vyapta. So it pervades all the tattvas and is actually beyond all the 36 tattvas itself. So even the Pashu, even though it is bound, it is spread out. And once it is actually spread beyond the 36 tattvas itself. It is a class of Shiva after all, but it just doesn't know it yet.
So are you saying the Pashu itself is physical? I mean, again, the word physical doesn't make sense here, right? It just, we conceive of things in our limited categories in our head. But when we say the Pashu itself is spreads out and covers everything, are we saying its knowledge does, or its consciousness, or itself does?
Per my reading, I would say itself, because in some of the texts, but I mean, I'm sure.
No, the only reason I ask that is then if there's infinite Pashus, do they overlap?
So that's the thing.
Go on.
Yeah, so this is a question which I keep asking Ghora too during the initial days. So it's because now we think of a soul as a physical substance that we think that they are overlapping.
Yeah, which is a point I was saying when I first brought this up.
So
these are concepts and categories we develop, right?
Exactly. So like in your mind, maybe exactly like in my mind before, you might be thinking of a Pashu as like this one circle and another Pashu as another circle, and whether they are on top of or overlapping with each other. Well, actually, they're much, much beyond that. We are not talking about in a physical sense where we can imagine them. They are equally pervasive. They pervade the entire universe. Actually, the universe is a created thing, right? We're talking about they pervade entirety of existence. All of them, all infinite souls do that. But it's just very difficult for us with our limited knowledge to even begin to conceptualize whether they overlap with each other or they flow into each other, or what kind of.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Because we are physical beings. We only think about things in the physical sense. It's almost impossible to think of things outside of physicality in some ways.
Yes.
So the Siddhanta's insight, if I may just add something, is that every sentient entity, when I say every sentient entity, that includes Paramashiva down to the microorganism, it's Atma, it's Chit Ghana. It's basically a pure mass of consciousness. It's pure Chit. So the Siddhantis say the issues of being non-pervasive and therefore the problems of whether there's overlap or not can only apply to things which are achit, not consciousness, matter, insentience. That which is pure sentience is beyond any such conceptualization of space or boundaries. So, in fact, it's not even when we say all pervasive, we immediately think of like one small atom that is expanding and expanding. There is no such thing also. It is simply all pervasive. It simply just exists everywhere. It is not growing in size. It's just all pervasive. It's very difficult to conceptualize. And I don't promise anyone trying to read Siddhanta that you can find an easy way to conceptualize this, because I don't think there's any such way. But at least to get some ideas right, what the Siddhantis say is that boundaries, overlapping, these don't apply to pure sentience, pure consciousness. As a matter of definition.
if I may give you a little bit of a way of thinking about this, say you've read a book and your friend has read a book, your consciousness and your friend's consciousness have both pervaded over the contents of that book.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Yeah. No, that's interesting, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
but what separates you and your friend is the way you have read that book and the way your friend has derived that book are unique to both of you. So you're still distinct, but then your consciousness has still pervaded over the contents of it and you have imbibed it. So in a manner of speaking, your chit has covered that content.
So that's interesting in that way, right? Because I mean, I'm going to relate to my own tradition in that sense. Is Ramanuja says that in his Pashas that the jiva is always anu, right, in relation to Ishvara as vibhu, but the jiva's consciousness pervades everything.
Yes.
The same. Again, it's difficult because you're in one sense he's talking about something physical, like some sort of physical relation, and the other thing he's talking about something that's like gives a physical sense, but he's explaining it in a way that's non-physical. Right? Pervasiveness is a very physical concept, but the way we're discussing it is like the example you gave of reading a book is actually very, very, very interesting. I really like that. I might steal it from you.
Sure.
No, I'll attribute it to you whenever I give it. But I think it's a brilliant way of thinking about it, right? Because somehow my consciousness did pervade that book. I read through the book. I understood it. I became one with it in some sense. And then someone else I might have given that same book and they did the same thing, but we're still pervading that book. Very interesting. Yeah. I like that idea.
Yeah. So if you can, so that's why I think when Ghora says that we are Chit Ghana, we have to not think of it in the sense of a physicality or, with having actual material bodies or anything of that sort, but you must think of it in the way how consciousness might pervade something. So if you think along those lines, it becomes a little easier, but again, it's still a hugely complex and complicated.
The one thing I would like to add to is that, see, in both the Ramanuja example you gave as well as the book example that Pinaki gave, the pervasiveness is due to knowledge. Now, Siddhanta goes one step beyond, and it says, because in Siddhanta, every chit gana, every sentient chit gana has an inseparable chit shakti, which is power of consciousness, which manifests as two vectors. One is jnana and another is kriya, action, power. So it is not just the soul is pervading by means of its knowledge, the soul is also able to act over everything at all times. I think that is one of the key teachings of the Siddhanta. When it says the soul is vibhu, it says that the soul has all objects within its grasp and therefore it knows everything, yes, but it also exerts a power over everything. It pervades the insides of every object. Like it acts like right now, you're not just having a knowledge of the book. The Siddhanta says you're actually in the atoms that make up the book right now. Right this very instant, you're in every atom of every book, every table or chair in your room right now. That's what the Siddhanta says. So the vibhu is actually taken to its fullest possible meaning. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, that's very interesting. I mean, that's very interesting to think through the philosophical implications of this, right? And then this is where like we start thinking about, do these rules of, or quote unquote rules of laws of non-contradiction and law of excluded middle and these things, do they even make sense when we start talking about this stuff at this level? Yeah, I feel like they don't. And I mean, even though people want them to, we're really talking about experiential nature of reality at some level. So in this regard, so we kind of discussed Mala as being the separate entity. Now, who is Ishvara and what is Ishvara? Or in this case, not the, what's the name? Not Pashu, but Pasha.
Paramashiva.
Yeah, Paramashiva.
Oh, you mean Paramashiva, right?
You mean Pati.
Yeah.
Pati. Yeah, Pati and Paramashiva. Who's Paramashiva? Who's Pati? What are
Pati
they?
and Paramashiva are the same.
Okay.
So Pati literally just
Means Lord, yeah.
yeah, but in this sense, it's very distinctly claiming that Pati is one who has never been under the influence of Mala. He has been beginninglessly, been opposed to Mala. So, like you previously had asked a question, what is the relation between Shiva and Mala? It's like they're enemies, but not in the way we would say like, oh, they hate each other, but in the sense like what they do is fundamentally opposed to each other. But Pati obviously has much more power than Mala can ever have. Even though Mala has infinite Shakti, it is Pati's Shakti which is opposing that Nirodha Shakti of Mala and granting us through Anugraha the power for us to finally, realize our omnipotence and omniscience.
So Mala obviously is insentient, right? It
Yes.
doesn't
Yeah.
have, but Pati is, as you said earlier, the bound or the bundle of consciousness, correct?
Chitgana.
Chitkana, yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
so Pati is Chitkana too, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
All souls are Chitgana.
All
in
souls.
Siddhanta.
So if Pati, so the main difference one can say between Pati and the Pashu is
Mhm.
Pati has never had Mala.
Yes.
Yes. It's
Is that
never
the-
been under the hold of Mala.
Is that the
Never.
only difference, or is there any other differences between Pati and Pashu?
I mean, essentially, that is the one difference that may, then, how do I put it? It results in all other differences. It's the mother of all other differences.
Yes.
Because Pati Paramashiva has never been under the hold of Mala is Drikriya Shakti. The Chit Shakti I told you about as two
Mhm.
vectors, knowledge and power, is completely unobscured and it's to its fullest infinite potential at all times. So it's always omniscient, always omnipotent, always omnipresent. So now, just to add one more point, the relationship between Shiva and Mala, when Pinaki said that Shiva and Mala are enemies, that is actually from Satyajyoti's great commentary on the Swayambhuvagama, where he says that Shiva is the eternal opponent of Mala. But interestingly, in the Ashtaprakarana works and other works, when you read, it says that, as in Tattva Prakasha especially, it says that Paramashiva gives his grace to both sentience and insentience. So now that's an interesting thing. So what does that mean practically is, see, Paramashiva is considered grace itself. Now, how do we understand this in a more philosophical way is, Paramashiva is the one who activates all sentience and insentience. That's what Siddhantis understand by grace. When we say Shiva graces someone or something, what we intend to convey is that Paramashiva makes that existent manifest its innate nature. So for a sentient, what is our innate nature? A sentient's innate nature is actually Shivatvam, just to be like Shiva. Omniscient and omnipotent is our innate nature. So when Paramashiva's grace makes contact with the Atma, a Pashu's Atma, it gradually frees the Pashu from Mala cold and makes the Pashu manifest its innate omniscience and omnipotence. Now, when Paramashiva's grace contacts an insentient, what does that mean? So I told you that, we told you that there are three insentients, Malakarma and Maya. The Siddhantis believe that Paramashiva's grace is falling on these three insentients as well. And the Tattva Prakasha, the question is asked, what does it mean for the Supreme Lord to grace an insentient? Because, the author of the work is clearly seeing that question coming from a mile away. And he says, it's the same definition. It is to bring out the innate nature of that insentient existence. So in the case of Maya, what is Maya's innate nature? Maya is like, say, a piece of clay, and its innate nature is to be made into various shapes. So Paramashiva's Anugraha, grace, allows that Maya to transform into different forms. And when Mahapralaya comes, the final dissolution comes, it goes back into Maya again. Back into Maya, the ultimate raw substance, the raw material. Now, when Paramashiva gives his Anugraha to Karma, what does that mean? Now, what is Karma's innate nature? Karma's innate nature is to be stored up in the form of latent sukha and dukkha. So when Paramashiva's anugraha falls on karma pala, what happens is the karma pala becomes ripe, and then you experience it as sukha and dukkha, pleasure and pain. So that's what we mean when we say Paramashiva's grace falls on karma. Now, what about mala? And that's where it gets interesting. It says that mala's innate nature is to obscure the soul, right? So when Paramashiva's anugraha falls on mala, what happens is mala is actually able to perform its operation of obscuring the soul better. But the thing is that then you can ask the question, wait, how can Paramashiva be said to be freeing us when he's also gracing mala with the ability to perform its obscuring function? And that's where the Siddhantis say, because each power of mala that binds a Pashu is ultimately insentient, it has only a finite number of cycles of operation. So each time Paramashiva makes it work, mala is actually expiring gradually. The analogy I can give you is something like a phone.
Battery's running down.
Exactly, battery. Exactly. It has 100 charging cycles. After the 100 charging cycles, the battery is going to break down. And the same thing is what Paramashiva does with mala. So his very grace to mala, it leads to its undoing eventually. And then the Pashu is able to get freed from mala and become just like Shiva, omniscient and omnipotent. So that's what. So it's a very interesting concept, because I don't think any other school ever talks about the Supreme Lord gracing sentience and insentience alike. Or,
No, it doesn't. It doesn't talk about it that way at all. Other schools, in many other schools, the world itself is just it's something to just kind of explain it or explain away, right? Than it is to
escape.
Yeah. It's interesting to me because here in this context of not only Shiva gracing, both the sentient and non-sentient things, then would the Saiva Siddhanta also call the entire play, the universe, a Leela too?
And that's the thing.
What's the purpose, I guess? What is the purpose of Shiva doing all this?
Okay. To put it simply, souls are eternal. The raw material that makes up all this universe, our bodies and our cognitive faculties, Maya, also eternal. Karma Pravaha is a beginningless stream. And Mala, the singular substance Mala, has infinite Shaktis, but then Mala itself is a singular substance, also eternal. So what Siddhanti says, all these things are eternal, and the Lord's spontaneous nature is to grace all of these, including us Pashus at the same time, so that each Pashu can eventually work away the Mala and Karma and get released. So in a one word answer, the real purpose of Paramashiva's continuing play of creation and destruction and so on is the liberation of sentient souls. That is considered the ultimate purpose in
Siddhanta. So no, I get that, but if that's his desire, right? He wants to free all the sentient souls. Could he not accomplish that without these cycles?
That question has been actually asked in the Siddhanta text. Like, why does he not just simply liberate all souls? I believe that the answer given by the Siddhanta theologians is that Shiva is not motivated or stirred by any desire, or nor is he troubled by anything. So, in fact, when I say Shiva graces the souls or graces the insentient entities, it's not like some actual person, oh, I feel benevolent and therefore I want to grace these things. It's not that. It's a spontaneous outpouring of grace. So the whole of creation, destruction, our bondage and our release from that bondage is seen as Shiva's grace causing us to develop as we ought to. Like it basically allows the innate nature of all existence to come forth and work itself out. That's how the Siddhantis see. The Siddhantis do not see Paramashiva as a personal God who feels disturbed by the bondage, but he's a God beyond feeling. He doesn't feel disturbed, nor does he feel incomplete or inadequate in any sense. So he spontaneously makes all of this happen. And therefore, in due time, when your Mala and Karma are ripe enough, you yourself will experience the loosening of the mala and karma, and then your Shivatvam, your innate Shivatvam will start coming out manifest. So that's what the Siddhantis teach.
Okay. Now, what is Shiva the same Shiva as Puranas and the Vedic text, or is there a different type of Shiva we're discussing here?
Okay, this is a particular topic I think I've written way too much on Twitter. So the Siddhantis go into a very baroque hierarchy of beings. And when you read the Siddhanta text and the commentaries are indispensable. Carefully, what you realize is that the being that you visit, the Devas visit on Kailasha and ask him to please slay the demons for us, please help us, please drink this poison. That being is not Paramashiva. And the Siddhantis are very clear about that. That being is called Shrikanta Rudra. He is the guru of the universe. He saves bonded beings by giving them knowledge, but he is not the Paramashiva who activates all of this Ashuddha Maya, Shuddha Maya, the one who literally switches on and off all of existence. He graces the sentience and the insentience alike. No, that is not Paramashiva who does all of those things. That is Shrikanta Rudra, who is so exalted in his Malapakwa, ripeness of Mala. His own Mala is so ripe and he's so exalted that Paramashiva allows you to visualize him. Although Paramashiva is formless beyond the comprehension of senses, he allows you to visualize Paramashiva with the form that Shrikanta Rudra has. So it's okay to visualize Paramashiva as having a body and a snakes around his neck, and he's holding a Trishula and everything. But Siddhantis will tell you, Paramashiva in truth does not have a body, nor does he hold these weapons, nor is he walking about. He does not have any form. He's truly beyond all forms and names. But for your sake, as a result of his spontaneous grace, Shrikanta Rudra's body becomes a worthy imagery for you to visualize Paramashiva. I think that's also a very, 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 it's a unique way of putting it.
Yeah, it reminds you of the being itself, right? That's beyond quote unquote deities. But then what's the relationship between the other devas and Paramashiva? Like, is Shrikanta Rudra the only being that's achieved that high level of purifying his mala, or are there other beings that are similar to that?
So the Siddhanta is an extremely elaborate and complex hierarchy of beings. Shrikanta Rudra is actually just one of those many beings. He's very important to us because he rules this Brahmanda, in which we have Swarga, Naraka, Devaloka, Asuraloka, and this human universe of ours, this universe with the galaxies and our planet, all are under Shrikanta Rudra's control. So he's very important to us. But the Siddhanta says there are hundreds of other Rudras who have achieved this status, and then there beyond these Shrikanta Rudra and these 100+ Rudras, there is this being called Ananta. He is the head of a group of 8 beings called the Vidyeshwaras, and they rule over all the mantras in the world. And this is where Shaivism really gets interesting, its conception of what is a mantra. It's quite colorful actually. And it says that Ananta is the one who rules over the entire Ashuddhadva, the impure universe. He rules over the entire impure universe. And Ananta is described to be literally Paramashiva in terms of his knowledge and power. Almost like he approximates Paramashiva in terms of knowledge and power, because his mala is so thin. He still has mala, by the way, but his mala is so thin that he approximates Paramashiva's omniscience and omnipotence. And for that reason, Ananta's form is also considered blessed enough to use in visualization of Paramashiva.
What is that form?
So it's a typical like Shaiva form, but it's I don't think it has I don't think it has what you call that. It does not look like Shrikanta Rudra per se, but it has a crown and it has arms in prostration, arms in supplication, and it has various Shaiva insignia on the forehead and other parts of the body.
So these various levels of, so Shrikanta Rudra and Ananta are both they're Pashus like everybody else, right? And but their level of mala is so thin or almost so purified, they're nearly freed, right, from
Yes.
the bondages of
They
full
won't come
mala.
down. They will never come down.
Yeah.
That's
So
one thing guaranteed. Yeah.
are these kind of positions, quote unquote, like say after this Rudra, this Shrikanta Rudra, and the next this Ananta go up, and they never return because they're freed. Is there some other Pashu that takes that place, or
yes?
Okay.
Yes. Actually, this is a very good question, because there actually used to be a debate in old Kashmir about what happens when Ananta finally gets ultimate vairagya and wants to resign from his position once and for all, because he wants to become just like Lord Shiva, omnipotent, omniscient, not directed by anyone to do anything any longer. He wants to become truly free. He doesn't want to be an emperor hearing the orders of another emperor. He wants to become truly freed. So what the Siddhanta theologians they proposed a number of solutions. One is that Ananta, when he gets that ultimate vairagya, he steps away from his duties. And what happens is that when he gets mukti at the end of Mahapralaya, all the other 7 Vidyeshwaras below him and a few hundred other Rudras who have also attained complete Malapakwa at that time, all will attain Paramukti together with Ananta at the end of Mahapralaya. And when Mahapralaya is over and the new Srishti is about to begin, these beings, they come out, they are all equal to Shiva. This Paramukti state is called the Shiva Samkhya state, being same as Shiva in terms of omniscience and omnipotence. So that is the mukti that these beings will attain. Now there was other opposing positions at that time which died off in Kashmir, but miraculously survived all the way in Indonesia. Indonesia actually, yes.
Oh, that's really cool. That's so
Indonesia.
cool.
It's very interesting. And the person holding this position, he was Satyajyoti's contemporary and he was known as Brihaspati Acharya. Interestingly, the Indonesian text that seems to mention his position is called Brihaspati Tattva. So scholars have postulated that somehow Brihaspati Acharya's position traveled all the way to Indonesia and survived there for some time, although it completely died off in India. So he took a different position. He said that, no, when Ananta steps away from his position after getting Vairagya, the next Vidyeshwara in line, Sukshma by name, he becomes the new Ananta. That's what he said.
That's very interesting. So then we have these various forms of what we would call I don't want to use the term, but I'll use it, like Puranic Shiva, or this are these lower levels of Pashus, and not lower levels, higher levels, Then what are the other Devatas? Let's say Brahma, Vishnu, or Devi. What role do they play within the tradition?
Okay, so the thing is, just like the Shiva Rudra complex, these other deities also can have higher and lower versions of themselves. So this is where it's very important. Everything below Ashuddha Maya Tattva is called Ashuddhadva, the impure path. And everything above Ashuddha Maya is called the Shuddhadva, the pure path. So in the pure path, we have a version of a Vishnu. That Vishnu never falls. He can never fall by right. And he is practically considered equal to Shiva in terms of knowledge and power. And there's also that higher version of a Brahma there, and so on. The Ganas that you see in the Puranas, you have higher versions of all those Ganas, like Nandi, Vrishabhadeva, and so on. So you see and Skanda, and you see higher versions of these beings there. And then in this Prithvi Tattva, in which there's a Brahmanda, in which we all live currently, we have the lower forms of those same Devatas. In fact, I'm still speaking because the Siddhanta theological speculation is something that is for me still ongoing, because the Acharyas unfortunately did not bother to explain everything in their writings. So it is something I'm still giving a lot of thought to. I personally see at least 3 different kind of Vishnu, if I can say that. There's another Vishnu at the level of Purusha Tattva, and so on. So, and because there are some Siddhanta text that says that the Vishnu of the Pancharatra doctrine is related to the Vishnu of Purusha Tattva. And then there's a Pauranika Vishnu, which is the Vaishnavas who don't really care for any Pancharatra or any doctrine. They just know this popular Vishnu of all his heroic exploits. They like that Vishnu. There is also Pauranik Shaivas like that. And though they are on the lower level, Tattva level wise, they will fall to the lower Tattva level after their lifetimes. They will attain to a lower Tattva level. But if you took a Pancharatra Diksha, you are expected to attain to the Purusha Tattva level, and so on. So there are all these different multiple Vishnus, multiple Brahmas. There's even, interestingly, there is also all the major classical Vedic gods. We have them as Dikpalas in the Brahmanda. So we have Agni. And the same Dikpalas are also manifested in the Shuddhadva. So a good Siddhanti will tell you the Dikpalas in the Shuddhadva and the Dikpalas in this Brahmanda we have right now, they have the same names, but they're not the same beings. They're two different sets.
It's similar to the idea of so it is above, so it is below, right?
Sort of, exactly. But they're still two distinct set of beings.
Yeah. So the other question is, does the Shakti here play a role in regards to Paramashiva, or is that duality between, or that deep, like most traditions of other traditions of Shaivism would have this relationship between Shiva and Shakti being almost intertwined. Is there something like that here within this tradition?
Oh, sorry. I didn't get the last part. Could you repeat it, please? So sorry.
No, sorry. Yeah, I was just saying, like in other traditions of either Shaivism or even Vaishnavism, the role of Shakti and Ishvara are almost, in some sense, intertwined and combined. Is there a relation? Is there a Shakti within this tradition that is connected to Paramashiva?
Definitely. Yes. Just because I earlier told you that every Atma has an inseparable Chit Shakti, the power of consciousness, which manifests as Jnana and Kriya, powers of knowledge and action. So Paramashiva is also an Atma. He's also a sentient entity. So Paramashiva also has his inseparable Parashakti, which is the name of his Chit Shakti, which is also beginninglessly unobscured by Mala, never been tainted by Mala. And it is through this Parashakti, Paramashiva contacts all existence with his grace. In fact, to put it more accurately, Parashakti is the grace. So it is that kind of conceptualization. So we rarely, I mean, if I can say, I could be wrong, but in comparison to the Vaishnava way of looking at Vishnu and Shri, I would say that Parashakti and Paramashiva are never really treated like two entities per se. They are treated like Paramashiva and how do I put it? Okay. Like, Madhvas will say that Vishnu Sarvottama.
Yeah.
Right. And I would say that Siddhantis see Parashakti as Paramashiva's Sarvottamatvam.
Okay.
Sarvottamatvam. That's how I will see it. It's like an inseparable supremacy of Paramashiva is itself Parashakti.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to within the Vishishta, like even for example, Lakshmi Tantra, Vishishta tradition, the role of Shri in relationship to Vishnu.
Yes, I think that's a fair point of comparison. Yeah. So I would say that.
Yeah, go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, go on. You're going to say.
No. This is interesting to me, just because normally we see these the worship of Shiva Shakti together almost pretty ubiquitously. And I was just wondering, I think your explanation of how the Sarvottama Tva of Shiva is actually Shakti itself is very interesting.
Yeah. Yes, exactly, because there's
clear that everything that Paramashiva does in this universe for souls and for insentience, everything is through Parashakti.
That's great. So we kind of laid out some of the theology, some of the philosophy, some of the relationship to the Puranic and Vedic deities. So I imagine the Itihasas also play a role within Saiva Siddhanta. What role do they play within that tradition?
Okay. Wait, before I go, I mean, I just want to know if does Pinaki have anything to say regarding this first?
Yeah, with regards to the Shakti aspect of it, there is one thing I would like to say is that in Siddhanta, we consider Bindu as the primordial material cause of everything. But there are Shaiva schools which believe in all the 36 tattvas who say that the Shakti is actually the material cause which creates everything. So we do differ from them in that one aspect where we do not believe that Shiva Shakti is direct material cause. She is the instrumental cause. You can say like how the potter's wheel is used by the potter to make the pot using the clay. The clay is Bindu, the wheel is Shakti, and Shiva is the potter. So that's the kind of thinking which goes in Siddhanta. And like in other schools which I am slowly beginning to study to see a comparison. For example, just recently I'm going through Siddhanta Shikhamani, which is a Veerashaiva text. There they believe that it is actually Shiva Shakti, but she is Ichha Shakti, which is broken down into, she separates into two, Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti. And with different combinations of Jnana Shakti and Shiva and Kriya Shakti, Shiva entering Jnana Shakti and Shiva entering Kriya Shakti, and then this creates the Shiva Tattva and the Shakti Tattva, and all the other tattvas are created by a mix of Shiva and his Shakti. But that kind of theology we don't have. So I can just quote or rather paraphrase Paushkara here, where it says that Shiva Shakti is Ananya. She is so deeply intertwined with Shiva that they are inseparable. There is a very beautiful Tiruvambavai where Tannir Pirigila Engomar Anbarku. So there Manikavasakar says that they're like water. How would you separate water from water, right? So they're like that closely intertwined. That is my Lord and his Shakti. So that way we have to visualize it. So and one more interesting thing is that in the lower levels, we see Shrikanta Rudra, right? There Parvati is not Shrikanta Rudra's Shakti. She is a separate Pashu. She is a different deity. She is not the Shakti version of Shrikanta Rudra. So
Yeah.
One mustn't confuse that, you know, when we are talking about Shiva Shakti, we are meaning Parvati Devi. No, we are not.
It's very interesting. You know, when I listen to so many, you know, like you guys and so many other traditions, it's not that it confuses me at all. I get excited because there's so many good ideas that I want to take from different traditions. And I think they're really fascinating and they make sense. Like, I feel like I wish there was one tradition that had them all together, because there's so many beautiful ideas playing out within, you know, Saiva Siddhanta, which I really find unique and very interesting. Like, I like the concept of mala is very fascinating to me. The concept of like the fact that there is like this clear plurality of beings, of things that aren't trying to be reconciled the way like they do many ways in most Vedanta traditions, right? All the Vedanta traditions, except for Madhva, will basically say it's all one, but Saiva Siddhanta is making a different point here, which I find very fascinating.
And also, I think amongst all the Astika schools, Shaiva Siddhanta is one which I'm not entirely sure if there is any other school which believes this, but Shaiva Siddhanta is the one which believes that even in Mukta, there is agency for the soul. All other schools believe that agency stops.
No. So Vishishtadvaita will take the position that there's absolute agency, that when Atma has Mukti, it can come and go into the world as it pleases. It can engage in all the basic acts of Ishvara, except for creation, destruction, and Moksha.
That is very similar to what Saiva Siddhanta says then, because the
See, I
Panchapratya
think
is
the one point I would like to add is that, and this is, I think, a key point of difference between the Meyakandar school and the Ashtaprakarana school that we mentioned earlier, is that in the Ashtaprakarana school, they take the omnipotence quite seriously to its full literal meaning. So if you ask them, can the soul, not will the soul, but if you ask them, can the soul create or destroy if it wants to, the answer would be yes. It can create and destroy if it wants to. But because it has attained a state where it is nirmala, beyond mala, it does not have any urge to usurp anything from the Lord. Nor does it feel the need to compete with the Lord or seek to overthrow him or in any respect. But it is truly, absolutely equal to him in every respect. So I think that's where Siddhanta makes a sort of unique point there.
And this is also a very good defense of polytheism, if you want to ever take it as one, where one of the contentions is that if there are multiple divinities, they'll always fight with each other and there will only be chaos in this.
And Ramakanta asks, like, and he gets asked the same question by the imaginary Purva Paksha, and he answers, if the soul is liberated, why should it feel the urge to do such chaotic things? That's the question he asks.
It's
Nobody
funny
asks.
because
Everyone takes the multiple Ishvara problem for granted, right? But Ramakanta says, why should that be a problem in the first place? Because we are saying the soul is liberated. You see, the Siddhanta conception of omnipotence is like this. It's not just ability to do everything. It must be actually you're all-powerful. And you can't be described as all-powerful if you're under the control of some kind of karma or desire. Then you're not omnipotent.
No, absolutely true. So I think the point I would also say is because of Saiva Siddhanta's, in some sense, I actually do think it's a absolute plurality tradition because of its diehard plurality stance. The world of insentience is something that any Pashu can do what they wish with. In other traditions, I think the problem is the nature of the universe or Jagat or Prakriti is somehow connected to the nature of Brahman or Ishvara. So if a jiva is able to then manipulate Ishvara, that becomes a problem. I think that's where the bigger issue arises versus the issue of, well, the jiva deciding to do something that's antithetical to, the nature of self or whatever,
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the strong points that I think Saiva Siddhanta has, is that because it's separated itself from having all things encompassed into one being or one entity, it has a little more freedom to take these positions.
Yes. So regarding this, regarding the Siddhanta conception of Mukti, I just wanted to quote this shloka from the Mrigendra Agama. It's one of my personally favorite shlokas. Saive Siddhe Bhati Murdni Itaresham Mukta Srishta Pumvaro Abhyeti Nadaha Vishwanarthan Svena Vishtabhya Dhamna Sarveshan Anirita Sarvadaste. So basically what he's saying is Saive Siddhe Bhati. So the soul that attains perfection in this Shaiva path, it becomes above all. Murdini Itaresham. It becomes above all other beings. Mukta Srishta Pumbaro Abhyeti Nadaha. It never goes down. Vishwanarthan Svena Vishtabhya Dhamna. It protects, basically it has nothing further to accomplish because by its own power it's holding all of the things in the universe together. There's nothing that can agitate it because every moment the soul, the mukta, is reassured that all this is under my control, just like Paramashiva, I am. It has that consciousness. Sarveshana. So that is Paramashiva. Sarveshana, the Ishana of all. Sarveshana, Anirita. Anirita means unstirred. He's unstirred. The mukta is not stirred by Ishvara any longer. Ishvara does not order the mukta, do this for thee. He doesn't say that because they are truly equals. Ishvara does not treat the mukta as a subordinate in any respect. So I always found this to be one of the most fascinating shlokas. Personally, it hit me to be frank.
No, it's very interesting. So even in Mukta stage, when the Ishvara and Pashu or Pati and Pashu become equal
The
in
Mukta.
some sense,
Yeah.
the Mukta
Yeah.
in the sense, yeah, Mukta.
Yeah.
Does the Mukta still have any sense of daso, dasarasa or dasabhava towards Ishvara, or is it true equality? I mean, do you still worship Ishvara at that stage? Do you still?
See, that's the interesting thing. I actually wrote about this recently on Twitter to explain what I understood as the meaning of continued worship in Mukti. When you say that a Mukta and a Paramashiva are absolutely equal, what does that actually mean? See, one of the things that is taught in Saiva ritual is Shivi Bhuya Shivam Yajet. Only if you become Shiva, you can worship Shiva. And that meaning is only pure, fully realized in Mukti. Because when you look at ordinary worship, what happens is you're performing with a flawed insentient body, and the dravyas that you offer to Bhagavan are all insentient dravyas, which are perishable items. They're imperfect. It's so flawed and it's so imperfect. But you realize that, wait, I'm always this infinite Chit Gana, which is all pervasive. Paramashiva is also an infinite Chit Gana that is all pervasive. Therefore, I'm always one with him in a state of union. I never realized it till now, but I've always been in a state of union with Paramashiva. The way I understood it, I'm not saying Siddhanta Acharya taught this because he never got into this particular mystery, rather. But how I understand it is to understand yourself as being equal to Paramashiva in every respect, to understand the fact that you were never separate from him, you were always in a state of union with him, is itself the highest worship you perform. And that doesn't require the Dasoham Bhava. You don't have to see yourself as a servant. Just understanding that absolute equality. You are pure consciousness. I'm also a unique pure consciousness. Both of us are omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient at all times. And both of us have always been in a state of union eternally and will ever be so. Just knowing that itself is considered the purest form of worship, because you're no longer offering an achit dravya to Shiva. You're offering yourself a chit into another chit. That is Paramashiva.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
That is how I try to theologize. Like one day it hit me, that inspiration. Wait, this offering of chit into chit, the union of the Mukta and Shiva, is itself the most perfect, blemishless offering you can make.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's so fascinating. Pinaki, do you have anything to add to that?
So yeah, this actually this a series of tweets about the Chit worshipping the Shiva came from a previous conversation I was having with Mariah Worth, where she explained how when Hindus defend polytheism, it somehow appears inferior, and I posed a question about why polytheism should be considered inferior and why monotheism is the logical culmination of everything. So in that, I was trying to explain. I mean, this chit being offered as chit is, of course, Ghora's new insight, which I do have to pick up. But from what I have read, it is na Shiva Shiva Marchayet. It's like a non-Shiva cannot completely worship Shiva. Yeah. So now how I understood it is, now when we are offering we offer the various dravyas through mantras and through various kriyas, there is potential for mistake, there is potential for lack of something. Anyone who has ever conducted a puja knows how many various ways things can go wrong. But as a true omniscient and omnipotent being, you are literally capable of doing this worship in its most massive, expansive, and infinite way possible. So as a Pashu who is worshipping Shiva in a very limited material way, in comparison to a Mukta, when you finally are able to achieve everything within, Siddhartha, you're literally, Siddhartha, Siddha Sankalpa, everything which you can do because you're a Mukta, you are able to do. Your worship of Shiva at that point becomes so magnificent and so infinite. That's how I understood this part. But of course, Ghora's insight into this is also very, very interesting, because in the Kriya Pada, we do, like, we are not just randomly picking up a flower and offering. We are, imbuing a certain sense. We are, ritually consecrating. What is consecrating? Through mantra, we are doing certain, we are bringing a certain quality into that dravya which is not naturally present into it. That is what Kriya is basically doing. Now, as a Mukta, you don't even have to do all that bringing down and, having an interface. You can do it as is. So that's a very interesting point which Ghorana said. But this was what I understood so far.
No, just to add to Pinaki's point, because he brought up an interesting point about the Kriya Pada. See, because the Siddhanta beautifully realizes, yes, the Lord Shiva, out of his mercy, has given you a ritual system to worship him and receive grace for yourself and others. But the dravyas are made of Ashuddhamaya. You're performing the ritual in actual real time, which is Kala Tattva and another Ashuddha Tattva. Everything you do is so tainted by the Ashuddha Tattvas, which is why when we perform the ritual, there is something called Chatush Samkhya, a fourfold sacrament of purification, in which you ask for Bhagavan's chit to be transferred into the dravyas that you're going to offer to him. So that it's not a mere insentient dravya that you're offering to Bhagavan. You're offering something where the chit has been made manifest. Of course, chit is everywhere. Like I told you, it is sarva vyapaka, it's omnipresent. But you make the chit manifest, especially in the offerings that you're going to offer, so that it becomes purer than what it originally is, an insentient dead flower or fruit or other food items. So so the Siddhanta actually makes you do that purification. And that's where I actually got the inspiration for my insight that, yeah, so in Mukti, you realize that you have been beginninglessly performing the offering of chit into chit. That is the purest offering that you're making. And that I picked it up from, in fact, the Kriya Pada section, which says that you must infuse insentient items with Shiva's chit before you offer it to him.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's very well said. So a question. So I know we're getting close to our 2-hour mark here. So I have a few more questions, and the last couple of questions I think will be a little more intense, because, or maybe not. What role do varna and women play within Saiva Siddhanta?
Okay. I came prepared for this particular question, actually, to be honest. Even we came with a scriptural quotation and all that. But maybe I'll just let Pinaki go first, then I will come with my point, if that's okay.
Okay.
Of course, please.
So one of the important lines which come from the Agama is Varnashra Dharman Manasapina Langhet. One must not even by thought cross or break the maryada of the Varnashrama Dharma. And the other position which Saiva Siddhanta has is the Lokachara is from Vaidika Dharma. So Vaidika texts. So what Vaidikam prescribes with regards to Varna and Varnashrama Dharma is what a Saiva Siddhantin would necessarily follow. So that's what I understand from this. And the other aspect about women, I can probably refer to the Mahotsava Vidhi and the other temple rituals where we have mention of Rudra Ganikas, who are actually women, dedicated to the temple. Of course, nowadays they are much maligned as in popular culture, but these threes were definitely, considered and placed at a very high, social status. But this is, of course, like one aspect is from the theological aspect. One is that about the Vaidika Dharma, which we take from Vedas, and the other is what kind of position Saiva Siddhanta is offering to the various varnas and women. It's like Diksha is what Saiva Siddhanta offers.
And Diksha is open to everyone, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But different recipients will get Diksha differently. See, Siddhantis, if you ask them what is Diksha, one word answer they ought to give you if they understand their Siddhanta well is Diksha is not a ritual. Diksha is actually Shiva Shakti. Diksha is not some sequence of steps, but Diksha is actually Shiva Shakti. It is just a case that most of us are so immature, like our Malapakwa is so bad that we are not fit to receive the direct gush of Shiva Shakti within the depths of our soul. So the least we need to at least feel is a little bit of aversion towards the impurity and the wretchedness of material existence, and the desire to find a suitable guru and surrender at his feet. And then the guru performs these kriyas where he uses his position as Shiva's earthly manifestation. Every guru is seen as an earthly embodiment of Paramashiva, and he uses that office to make Shiva Shakti shower upon your soul, figuratively speaking, shower upon your soul and cause the mala to ripen, and therefore make you get you started on the path towards realizing your inherent Shivatvam. Now, to Pinaki's point about Varnas, yes, I was actually going to quote that exact shloka. Varnashamacharan manasapina langayet. Not even in mind should you transgress the Varnashrama rules. Yo yasmin ashrame tishtan prapto diksham shivatmikam sa asminneva santishtan shivadharmancha palayet. So what it says is, the whole quote, which is quoted by Agora Shivacharya's Tika gloss on Tattva Samkhya of Bhagavan Sadhyojyoti, what he says is, Yo yasmin ashrame tishtan prapto diksham shivatmikam, in whatever ashrama, so here by ashrama you should take both varna and ashrama, whatever ashrama you stood in, tishtan prapto diksham shivatmikam, you received that diksha which is of the nature of Shiva, basically a long-winded way of saying Shaiva diksha. Tasminneva santishtan Shiva dharmancha palayet. You stand in that very varna ashrama and continue protecting the Shiva dharma, Shiva's religion. So you execute your obligations towards Shiva and Shiva's religion, but you stand in the same varna and ashrama that you were in before you took diksha. So that is an important thing. A later 17th century work which was composed in Kanchipuram by Panchakshara Yogi, Siddhanta Acharya, called Saiva Bhushanam. It interestingly says that this is a unique insight of Siddhanta, where it says that there are actually two kinds of Dvijatvam, Vaivika Dvijatvam and Agamika Dvijatvam. Now, Vaivika Dvijatvam you are familiar with. It is the twice-bornness that you get by performing the Vaivika sacrament.
Yeah, Yajnapavitam, yeah.
Exactly. You adorn the Upavitam, you do the Upanayana, and you get the Upavitam, and it's open traditionally to only Trivarnika males, Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya males. But the Agamika, the Diksha, the Agamika Dvijatvam is obtainable by all. And one who has performed the Shiva Diksha, one who has gotten the Shiva Diksha performed for him by a guru, he's as good as a Brahmana. But it says, for the purposes of worldly obligations, lokachara, you still remain in the varna and ashrama that you were. So you don't transgress those varna-based obligations. But as far as the Shaiva religion is concerned, you are to be respected as a Brahmana. So it says that. And interestingly, this was one of the controversial aspects of the Siddhanta religion that Yamanacharya attacks in his Agama Pramanya. Interestingly, of the Shiva, the Vishishtadvaita school, he says that the Shaivas have sort of messed up the social contours by saying that anyone can become a Brahmana. But the counterpoint is the Siddhantis will say that no, we are not saying anyone can become a Brahmana, but what we are saying is there are two different kinds of Brahmanas here. There are two different kinds of Dvijatvam here. Vaivika Dvijatvam and Agamika Dvijatvam are two different things. And when you go a little deeper, they answer you, is because Vaivika sacraments concern the body, which is why they're dependent on the body. You need to be born in a particular Rishi's line in order to qualify for the Vaidika Upanayana. But you don't have to be born in any line to qualify for the Agamika Diksha. So because Agama Diksha is simply dependent on only one thing. Are you a soul? Are you a Pashu? Are you a Pashu that yearns to be freed? That's all. That's the only qualification you need for Agamika Dvijatvam is your understanding that you're a Pashu and your desire to be freed from that state. Yeah.
So in regards to that, I mean, is there been any direction given by Siddhanta Acharyas in modern day? Because, you know, the Varna stuff is kind of fallen apart across India. So how are one supposed to address it? Is it just, let's just follow the Saiva Siddhanta tradition and get Diksha through that, right? Is that really the focus now?
I would say that even in Tamil Nadu, where a lot of social changes have happened, and they've happened in the Shaiva context, socio-political changes, in fact, right? By and large, the Tamil Shaiva Adinam, the Shaiva monasteries of Tamil Nadu, although they're all headed by non-Brahmana acharyas, they still maintain the traditional position that, okay, don't mess with the Vaidika system or the Vaidika Dvijatva system, because it has its own purpose and you still require people to be born with those particular qualifications and perform the rituals that the Lord has imposed on them. So don't touch it. But if you get initiated into the Agama and you're reborn in the Shaiva Agama, in the Shiva Diksha, then you are to be treated with reverence. So I think that is still the status quo position of most of the orthodox Shaiva heads of monasteries. Not all. I think some take a more radical position of complete abolitionism, or basically they want to tear apart the whole Vaidika system. But the orthodox position is a little bit more nuanced and balanced.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Like, I think I would probably be in between the orthodox and radical. Let the people that want to do this do that, and if you don't want to do it, there's entire new tradition you can follow, and we don't need to change other people's lives.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. We've covered a lot today. Is there anything you guys think that we should discuss that we haven't?
I mean, to be honest, that is something I can always speak for on ours.
Of course, no. Of course we can.
But I'm just thinking of final points to say. Right. I think we've actually covered pretty much Shaiva soteriology, the Shaiva position on Mukti, salvation, and basically the unique selling points of the Shaiva.
And the ontology, right? We covered the
ontology also.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think the ontology, in fact, just to answer one question which you asked, and I think we both forgot, was the Itihasas. Just to give you a bit of an insight, because again, this is something I've been working on. And there's a whole thread on Twitter, which you can check out later. You search for Ghorangirasa #Shiva Bharatam, which is basically my take on how Shrikanta Rudra plays a vital part in almost every incident of the Mahabharata. The reason I did that, and I expressly did a sort of Siddhanta-laced interpretation of the Mahabharata, was because, see, traditionally Mahabharata and Ramayana, they're seen as Samanya texts that is revered by all, or Vaishnavas give it a Vaishnava interpretation, and that is seen as something to be taken for granted because Mahabharata and Ramayana both concern Vishnu Avatara. But what the Siddhantis sadly ignored Samanya texts for much of history, because they took the position that Lord Shiva is given an independent revelation in the form of the Siddhanta Agama. There was no need to go too deep into the Samanya texts such as the Ramayana or Mahabharata. But if you read the Mahabharata in line with Shiva Purana and other texts, you directly get the insight that the Rudra and Mahadeva you frequently encounter in the Mahabharata, such as where he fights Arjuna and all those incidents. That Rudra is not Paramashiva. That Rudra is Shrikanta Rudra. Shrikanta Rudra is the one who performs all these leelas and causes things to happen, causes fights to happen, and so on, in line with different souls' karma. So you get that perspective. So yeah, I've actually done a thread on that particular issue.
No, I
And
think that's fair.
And one more interesting thing about that is also that we know that this is Shrikanta Rudra, but then there are mentions of where there is a Shiva who is the son of Brahma and so on. That is actually an avatar of this Shrikanta Rudra. So,
Yes.
so it's not even Shrikanta Rudra proper. It's like his avatara is coming as the son of Brahma. So it's like when you actually think about it, there are like multiple variations of Shiva or Shrikanta Rudra within the context of just Mahabharata itself. And I would like this is based off the suggestion which Ghorana gave me too, is like to check out the Vayavya Samhita section of the Shiva Mahapurana.
Yes.
That is the
because,
best place for you to
yeah,
find
go on.
resources between.
Because there are like incidents in the Mahabharata and also referred to again in the Vayavya, which is the final concluding book of the Shiva Purana. And the sages ask a question to Vayu. No, you say that Shiva is so perfect, is beyond form, is beyond this, is full of grace. So why is it that we see him burn Manmata? Why is it that we see him being angry towards a few cows which spit foam on his head, or things like that? The cows spitting foam on Shrikanta, I mean, the so-called Shiva's head, is an incident referred to in Mahabharata itself, where a few cows and their calves spit froth, basically their mouths are frothing with foam, which fall on Rudra's head. So the sages in the Vayavya Samhita of Shiva Purana, they refer to this Mahabharata incident, and then they ask Vayu the question: if Shiva is so full of grace, why does he do all these very fierce deeds? Why does he punish? Why does he punish the Devas, break their limbs in Daksha Yaga? Why does he burn Manmata to ashes and do all these things? And why did he get angry at the cows? And then Vayu explained, oh, in reality, the one who did all those actions is not Paramashiva, it's actually Shrikanta Rudra. So he actually gives that answer. So that is one of the things that inspired me to, okay, let's look back at the Mahabharata, because now we have an insight that the Rudra Shiva that's appearing in Mahabharata is not Paramashiva, it's Shrikanta Rudra by Shiva Purana, direct testimony through the mouth of Vayu Devatas. So I took a step back and saw, okay, so there are all these incidents in Mahabharata where Shiva played a critical role in the shaping of the whole conflict and the grand narrative. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'd love to see more of that work. Maybe next time, if we have you guys on again, if we have time, we can cover things like responses to Shankara Dvaita or other schools of thought.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to cover there. I'm sure Pinaki will be excited.
There's a lot.
Because there is something Pinaki and I have been discussing, offline.
Right. I mean, your response to Buddhism, response to Jainism, Nyaya, Mimamsa, all that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, thank you guys both for joining me today. I mean, we spent almost 2 hours talking about, Saiva Siddhanta, and I've learned so much, and this is so good because I didn't know any of this, and I'm really, really excited to now the sources you give, the eight texts, Ashtaprakarana. I want to check out those texts and maybe buy them. And are there ones with the Sanskrit and English together?
See, unfortunately, not all of the Ashtaprakarana have been translated, but some have. Actually, I'll get in touch with you privately and give you more.
Yeah. I like to have the English there with the Sanskrit, so I'll read the Sanskrit and then just also have the English if I want to read quickly.
If your Tamil is good, then there are complete translations.
My Tamil speaking is okay. My Tamil reading is like a second grader.
There's a 1930s complete Tamil translation of all 8 treatises of the Ashtaprakarana.
Oh yeah.
But but no worries. I think there are few of the 8 Ashtaprakarana which have been translated into English. So I can I will get in touch with you privately.
Absolutely. Well, Gora and Pinaki, thank you both so much for joining us. If you have any last comments or anything to say before we close out for today?
No, I'm good. Thanks so much for having us here. It's been great.
Pinaki?
Thank you so much, Mukund, especially because I get to listen more from Ghora about these topics. It's like I am also learning at the same time, so it's it was a good experience actually coming and talking about these topics. So hopefully next time when we talk about polemics, I'll be right down there and answering.
That should be good. That'll be fun. In a jovial, nice, friendly manner, we'll definitely do that. So thank you everyone for watching and joining us today in Mirror Media, and catch us next time. I'm going to put all the show notes and Twitter access to both Pinaki and Gora online on the show notes, and you guys can follow them and get more information on Hinduism in general and Saiva Siddhanta in particular. All right, thanks everyone.
Pavana Munijana Yamuna Tire, Pavana Munijana Yamuna Tire, Gayati Vanamali, Gayati Vanamali, Maduram Gayati Vanamali.